Good afternoon. My name is Cathy Knight. I'm the Executive Director of the Church Within a Church movement, and we are very excited to be having this press conference of our second ecumenical Extraordinary Ordination in a Methodist tradition, minus the closet. Thank you all for coming. I would like to introduce the fine women who will be part of our press conference today, and then we would invite a Q&A after they make their statements to us all. Directly next to me is Colleen Riley, the Extraordinary Ordination Work Area Leader for the Church Within a Church movement. Next to Colleen is Robyn Morrison, one of the ordinands of the Church Within a Church movement. And then DeLyn Celec, the other ordinand for this afternoon's service. And next to DeLyn is Rabbi Shafir Lobb, who will be introducing herself and the reason why she is supporting the Church Within a Church movement and this ordination today. So why don't we begin with a statement from Colleen.
Extraordinary ordinations send a powerful message to people about what inclusivity and justice can look like when all God's people are valued and their gifts are given sacramental recognition. As a formerly closeted person in the United Methodist Church, I lived with fear, isolation, and threat of the shame of a public trial would be visited upon me if the hierarchy of the church knew my identity as a lesbian in a relationship. When my partner died in a wreck one morning, I stood on that very highway, relating her identity to the highway patrol. It became shockingly clear to me that I could not claim her to be my spouse or next of kin, not in any legal way, or even allude to the nature of our relationship, lest I risk losing my livelihood as a United Methodist minister. In the middle of that greatest grief of my life, I was left bereft of the comfort and care of my congregation because I could not breathe the words of my loss without also losing my clergy credentials. I was silent about the loss of my own home to the family of my beloved, and found myself asking questions about whether my relationship had been what I thought it was. At that moment, when I realized the questions going through my mind, I realized that I had begun to internalize the message of the invalidation of my relationship by my denomination and the culture at whole. I realized that I would need to make some decisions about my own ordination. I didn't know what those decisions might look like. And then in 2008, a friend of mine handed me a bulletin. That bulletin was about an extraordinary ordination that was going to take place in Baltimore in a United Methodist Church, and it was said to be an ordination without the closet in a Methodist tradition. I couldn't imagine what kind of an event this was, or who were these people of Church Within a Church movement. But it sounded like hope to me. And so I made plans to go and attend. And it was hope. More than that. In that United Methodist Church in Baltimore, what I experienced was not just the ordination of two women, but also a context in which my own life and ministry found validations in ways that I had never experienced before as a clergy person. It was also an experience of validation to others in attendance who had quit seminary or who had given up the idea of even pursuing the possibility of candidacy because of their sexual orientation. There's a deep hunger in people who have experienced their own denomination's condemnation. Those who have been silenced by the don't ask, don't tell policies of the church long to hear and experience the grace that they and their ministries have worth. Here today, in this very service, they have the opportunity to hear a resounding yes to their longing to be named as those who have sacred worth. I believe people here today are going to feel what it is like when justice and inclusion are not just words, but a lived experience.
Thank you, Colleen. Robyn?
I'm excited to be ordained in the Church Within a Church movement for a number of reasons. But the most important reason is that I'm a disciple and follower of Jesus. And to me, Jesus was constantly moving to the margins, loving and welcoming those who were judged and rejected by his own religious tradition. In March of 2010, after 7 years of struggling to follow Jesus within the restrictions of the United Methodist Church, I faced a crossroads: move over 500 miles away from my husband and submit to a disciplinary process, or voluntarily withdraw my clergy status. My adult daughter, Kelson, and I held each other as I cried. And she said, "Mom, I never understood why you would want to be a United Methodist pastor. I won't have anything to do with the church because they judge my sexuality as incompatible with Christian teaching." And we both know it's not. My daughter's profession and mission in life is preventing domestic and sexual violence. In that same conversation, she pointed out to me that my relationship with the church had been abusive for years, and it was time for me to stop the abuse and to choose another path. The rejection and injustice I experienced within the United Methodist appointment system gave me a taste of injustice and abuse that's been perpetrated against women, sexual minorities, and people of color. The Church Within a Church offers me a community of practice, a spiritual companions who share my commitment to being the fully inclusive church now. From the point of first contact with the Church Within a Church, they gave me an extravagant welcome. I found that I could struggle with them for justice and peace in the world rather than struggling against an institution. The movement is committed to starting new faith communities, and in spite of having started many new enterprises and having a passion for reaching new people with the message of God's grace, the United Methodist Church had obstacles and blocks in my path and prevented me from doing that. A bishop explained to me that in a highly institutionalized system that depends on guarantee of appointments, no one was going to ordain someone for an outside-of-the-box ministry. They were ordaining people to serve existing churches, not start new ones. There's a paradigm shift going on in the world right now, and nonviolent, non-hierarchical movements are appearing everywhere. I had the pleasure of going to Occupy Portland and seeing that in action. The early Methodist movement arose out of a time of transition from an agrarian society to an industrial society, and there was a sense of urgency in the Methodist movement to get the good news to the poor and the outcast and the marginalized. Jesus started a movement. The founder of Methodism, John Wesley, started a movement, and they were both outside-of-the-box ministers. My personality is better suited to being part of a movement than it is to participating in a highly institutionalized system. And that's why I'm excited to be ordained in the Church Within a Church movement.
Thank you, Robyn. Our other ordinand is DeLyn Celec.
Thank you. In 2008, I came out of a meeting in which I thought I was going to be passed along as a check mark. Yes, she is welcome to be in the United Methodist Church as a clergy person. And I was surprised in that meeting to find out that, in fact, I was not going to be passed along because of my loving, committed relationship with my partner, Sarah. And I was honest about it and wanted to serve with integrity. And so, of course, we had a very difficult time after that, trying to figure out what the next steps were going to be. I had thought about a type of ministry that might be in a different denomination, but that did not fit me well, because of course there are other Christian denominations that do welcome people who are lesbian and gay, transgender, transsexual, intersex, and bisexual. And unfortunately, that didn't suit me. I am very rooted in the theology of the Methodist Church that has nurtured me, educated me, and called me and inspired me to be a clergy person. So, fortunately and wonderfully, the Church Within a Church movement gives me the freedom to serve with integrity, to allow my partner to serve with me in all of our ministries in which we minister together. We look forward to the many ways that we're going to be able to serve in campus ministry, music ministry, worship arts ministry, and many other things with the freedom to speak boldly that all people are welcome in the kingdom of God. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you, DeLyn. And next we'd like to hear from Rabbi Lobb, who is celebrating with us this afternoon in the Extraordinary Ordination, and we're very pleased that she's here.
Thank you so much. And my statement starts out by saying in Genesis, God says, let us create humans in our image, to be like us, having divine character. And then God creates humans, male and female, with divine essence. The mystics see in this text the embodiment of the divine spark in all of us. In all of us. One of my teachers, Rabbi Daniel Siegel, talks about knowing when God is speaking to us, not just by the good feeling that it creates inside us, but by the test of whether or not we see God's divinity in all humans, in all of God's creation. Seeing the divine in all humans is a long journey. When the United States first became a nation, our founding document said, all men are created equal. The challenge was that not everyone was a man. Some of us already had a nation. Some of us were women. Some slaves, and some simply not even counting. Thankfully, this is changing over time as we learn that God created magnificent beings in God's own image. Simply said, God does not make junk. Let me repeat that. God does not make junk. I am the rabbi of a congregation which is home to gay families, straight families, singles, and searchers, who see the image of God in each other as we come together in community. My own ordination comes through the Aleph Rabbinical Program, which in its many years of ordaining rabbis has never excluded a candidate for gender or sexual orientation. Over time, this attitude is moving into the rest of Judaism as the major liberal movements have dropped their own prohibitions. And this attitude is even making inroads into Orthodox Judaism. At the same time, our Christian counterparts have also made similar strides. Some Presbyterian, Lutheran, Episcopalian, and UCC people of faith have dropped all prohibitions against anybody from the LGBTQ community. There are no exclusions in God's realm. God only asks that we seek the divine in all that we do. While there is still a long way to go until we all hear God's inclusivity, it is events such as this extraordinary ordination that will help us broaden our understanding of that all of us are indeed part of God's creation. Again, God does not make junk. We are all created in God's image. Being created in God's image is about all of us. It means that God is gay, male, female, straight, and transgender. What we do with God's creation, how we learn to be godly in loving and caring for all of God's people, is a measure of our own growth in this experience that we call life. In Isaiah 56, God instructs us that God's house is to be called a house of prayer for all peoples. In that same chapter, we are told that God will gather the outcasts, even the eunuchs, and give them a great name within God's house. God also welcomes the stranger. all that choose to serve God in love. That's the open, deep, abundant heart love, namely the one of wanting the best for all concerned, helping others to feel the deep joy of God's presence in their lives. There are no exclusions in Isaiah's text. There were no exclusions in the Genesis text. We still have work to do to make our tents as big as God's tent. Today's extraordinary ordination helps us grow our own understanding of God's tent. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is when all can dwell together. May we do so in the shade of God's tent. May we see everyone as truly B'Tselem Elohim, in God's great loving essence and image, in God's very own image. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. We'd now like to open the floor.
We don't have a word from the pastor who has been hosting us, so if you
Mike, please come in.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
We need some
Pull a chair for you.
different energy, perhaps.
Well, after this morning, I don't have
We're welcoming Mike Smith, who is the temporary pastor in an interim situation here at St. Mark's Presbyterian Church. And I just want to say for the record, Mike, that we have had extraordinary hospitality.
Thank you, Mike.
Absolutely extraordinary hospitality, and we could not feel any more welcome in the Presbyterian Church than you have made us feel. So we're so grateful to be here. And would you like to say a word?
Sure. And thank you for that. Hospitality is a major biblical virtue. So if we're doing a little hospitality, we're glad to be faithful to whatever degree that is. St. Mark's Presbyterian Church is delighted and honored to host a church within the church movement here today. We stand in solidarity with their just cause of opening doors to ordination to lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender persons in the United Methodist Church, and to offer alternative ways for those left out to fulfill their calls to ministry. Our faith urges us to affirm and celebrate the diversity of humankind, all created in God's image and all called good by God. There is a place for everyone at Christ's table. Presbyterians know well the struggle to change discriminatory policies regarding sexual orientation. We removed the ban on LGBT ordination from our Constitution just last July. Now it is imperative that we support others still seeking justice. Archbishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa said in a letter to the Presbyterian Church earlier this month, "By making it possible for those in same-gender relationships to be ordained as pastor, preacher, elders, and deacons, you are being a witness to your ecumenical partners that you believe in the wideness of God's merciful love." So with great joy, we host the church within a church and stand beside them until Christ's church is truly a church for all God's children.